Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to Sustain's Live Lounge. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarah Williams. I'm the Director of Programmes here at Sustain. So we're now in session 2, which is what is the action agenda on the ground locally and regionally for a better UK food system? And I just wanted to really briefly set the scene for this segment. Action at local authority and sub-national level was been highlighted as a strategic focus for Sustain in our current strategy. And we've heard it come up many times already today, which is fantastic. During the last 4 years, it's been an incredibly exciting area of growth and impact with councils, our food partnerships, farmers, retailers, and others changing places at local level through food policy and practice. Here at Sustain, it encompasses our wonderful Sustainable Food Places network, which we run with many partners, supporting over 100 food partnerships across the UK. And we're going to hear from Katie, Charlie and Nikki, all of whom are involved in that growing force for change. It also covers our Good Food Local work, which started as our benchmarking in London over a decade ago and have been rolled out to the northeast. And we'll hear more from Nikki on that journey today, and also some exciting announcements later on. Local is often our test bed here at Sustain, where we work to show the policies that are needed at scale. And we're also going to hear directly from 2 of the Bridging the Gap pilots that were covered in the film that you just watched. So this work on the ground is really the stuff that gets me and many of the team here out of bed every day, innovating solutions, building resilience from the ground up and championing those policies that we really need to see nationally. So I'm really delighted today with a panel that can show you a taste of that can-do spirit from across the UK nations. Just a few of those groundbreakers and local action champions that are working with us to take local action on to its next step. So we've got 4 really quick fire presentations, and then we'll have some opportunity for questions. So please do start filtering your questions through in the Q&A box as you listen to the speakers, and we'll come back to those at the end. And just for a notice for my panel, I'll give you all a 1-minute warning when your time is up. So without further ado, first off, we're going to hear from the wonderful Katie Palmer from Food Sense Wales. She's the founder and head of Food Sense Wales, and with a master's in both nutrition and food policy, she's been really well placed to drive forward the good food agenda in Wales, as well as being a key part of many of our programmes, including Sustainable Food Places, Veg Power and Bridging the Gap. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you for inviting me to talk today. Yes, so lessons from Wales on food systems change. Well, maybe I'll start by just briefly introducing you to Food Sense Wales, because I don't expect everybody to have heard of us. We were established back in 2018 off the back of Food Cardiff, and we're aiming to influence and impact on how food is produced and consumed in Wales by co-creating a food system that's good for the people and for the planet. If I could have the second slide. We've got 3 main pillars to our work: building a positive food culture, catalysing a revolution in local and sustainable procurement centred around horticulture, and co-creating a positive food policy and legislative framework. And we're attempting to do this through working predominantly in partnership by developing a network of cross-sector food partnerships, obviously with the Sustainable Food Places network, piloting and scaling innovative approaches. And one of the ways we've been doing that is working in partnership with Bridging the Gap programme, advocating for and developing good food policy with other stakeholders in the food system through Food Policy Alliance Cymru, and really importantly, telling the stories as we go about what's working and where the challenges are. So I started my journey as coordinator of one of a handful of places piloting the innovative Sustainable Food Cities, as it was then, approach for Food Cardiff. Almost exactly 11 years later, Sustainable Food Places now boasts over 100 members, as Sarah's just said, and 10 of these are in Wales. Cardiff has also recently received the Gold Sustainable Food Places Award. In its early days, Food Cardiff presided over the development of the first government-supported programme for summer holiday provision in the UK, Food and Fun, benefiting tens of thousands of children and their families. Wales now has all 22 local authorities developing a local food partnership, supported through cross-government funding through the social justice team and the food and farming team in Welsh Government, and by the support of Sustainable Food Places. Food partnerships will be one of the vehicles for delivery of the government's forthcoming community food strategy, and have the support of the Wellbeing Future Generations Commissioner, who has called for Welsh Government to develop a new plan for food in Wales. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Act calls on all public bodies to consider future generations in its decision-making. Public bodies have to produce what is called wellbeing plans to demonstrate how they're meeting their wellbeing objectives. The Commissioner, Derek Walker, has said that Wales cannot meet its wellbeing objectives if it's not getting food right. So he is asking public bodies to make food a priority. Food Sense Wales is working with the Commissioner to develop advice to public bodies on food, and this work is being triangulated with efforts in Welsh Government through the Community Food Strategy and the work of local food partnerships to build local action supported by those leaders within public bodies. But Wales still doesn't have a national plan for food, and we don't know how the UK food strategy is going to impact on that either. The food bill brought forward in 2022-23 as a private member's bill fell, but played a very vital role in raising the profile of food within government and building wider consensus within the food system. It resulted in the First Minister committing to convene a cross-ministerial forum on food and the publication of a document called Food Matters, which is a cross-governmental account of how all of the policies and activities in Wales on food join up and how they support the objectives of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And whilst Food Matters is not a strategy, it was a really important stepping stone. And 2026 is going to look very different to 2025. May 2026 brings Senedd elections, and with a new voting system, we're going to have proportional representation and an expanded Senedd from its current 60 to 96 seats. Many of the existing MSs that we have relationships with are standing for re-election, and we'll also see some effectively standing against one another. So could I have the next slide, please? So some reflections. Without legislation, and what with only is going to be a more challenging financial context in 26-27, as we're seeing, the question we are holding is how do we hold on to those collective successes that we've made? Those things like support for food partnerships through the Community Food Strategy, universal primary free school meals, and food and fun, which all form part of the current programme for government. Food Sense Wales has spent over 6 years working as part of a movement to build the foundations for a fairer and more resilient food system. Much of that work has been under the radar and has involved years of building relationships, building the evidence base, supporting the development of local food leaders, building respect, and putting those actors who are doing amazing things front and centre through telling their stories. Weaving connections between those foundations and building on them has also been key to success. Using food and fun to test other pilot projects, such as the courgette pilot, which has evolved into Welsh Veg in Schools, which you've just seen. Working with food partnerships to develop local connections, relationships and assets needed to deliver Welsh Veg in Schools. One of those things has been carrot washers. Working with Welsh Veg in Schools to develop and link up education resources such as Veg Powers Eat Them to Defeat Them, and to make school farm links, and the list goes on. The idea of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is that it supersedes political cycles. Therefore, having the commitment of the Future Generations Commissioner, who is 2 years into a 7-year tenure, will be absolutely key and an excellent test of the Act. It will also be a test of the strength of the foundation within Wales's good food movement that have been invested in by many stakeholders over many years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katie. I'm really looking forward to coming back on a few points. There's really so much we can learn from what's going on in Wales, but as you say, nothing stands still. So next up, we're delighted to hear from Nikki Dravers. Nikki coordinates the Gateshead Food Partnership, and today she's representing the North East Good Food Local Collective, which is coordinated by the ADPH in North East. But like many of us, she wears many hats and is also the founder and managing director of a social enterprise called Refuse, based in a community cafe in County Durham. Over to you, Nikki.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm Nikki. I coordinate Gateshead Food Partnership, which is quite newly formed and is hosted by Gateshead Council. I was one of many food partnerships as well as public health leads across the North East region to have been involved in implementing the Good Food Local North East exercise over this past year. So this was a project put together and led by Sustain, but commissioned by the Association of Directors of Public Health, ADPH North East. The North East, as many know, of the North East of England has some of the highest rates of food insecurity and diet-related health inequalities in the UK, but also has quite a unique, I think, precedent for working in partnership across the region. So when this opportunity came up, it was relatively easy to pull together a steering group that could be formed with partners such as North East Sustainable Food Alliance, which includes many of the food partnership coordinators in the region, ADPH and North East academic collaborations like Fuse. So next slide, please. So yeah, the North East region was selected by Sustain as the kind of regional project guinea pig partner following the success of a Good Food for All Londoners approach. The project will run over 3 years and with a sort of round of benchmarking questions asked to each local authority each year. So we're at the end of our first year now, and we've had 13 local authorities complete the first round of baseline benchmarking. And the intention is to show progress over those 3 years, to advocate and learn from each other as we go. The first round resulted in some regional recommendations, which were published online, as well as bespoke local recommendations shared with each of the local authorities' directors of public health. Next slide. So what it looked like, so each local authority was given a range of detailed questions specifically focused on what the councils are doing. So even though food partnerships were involved in the steering groups and setting the questions and action plans, this was specifically focused on action and policy within the local authorities. So the questions covered themes across the food system, as you can see, from tackling food poverty through Healthy Start and universal free school meals to catering and procurement and land use or planning policies, in line in some ways with the Sustainable Food Places themes. And as you can see, each region was ranked, whether they are showing leadership to where they are at more foundation stage of action. And I really recommend you go to Sustain's Good Food Local North East online platform, which has got an interactive map and lots more detail on all these recommendations, as well as ADPH's website, which has published the kind of case studies, 30 different case studies. So I'll put these links in the chat. Next slide. And this is just to show that, yeah, we were able to come up with 30 different case studies, approved for publication at least, about action in all of these food system areas. And so it was a really great opportunity to highlight some brilliant work going on across the region of the North East of England. Next slide. So to conclude, what was the impact of this work regionally? I think first of all, it's useful to say that this was a regional collaboration that is aimed at supporting local action in place. So even though it was a regional work about sharing practice and adding power to our voice, advocating for change on a larger footprint, the change itself and the impact happens in place and locally. So I think the framework helped build consistency in our kind of standards and principles. I think it's helped us or it will and continue to help us sort of hold our teams to account. So we can say to our teams within the local authority, well, Sunderland have done it, why can't we? And not using that as a stick, but because we know that each local authority is very different and starts from a very different place, but knowing what others have done helps to have those conversations. I think the project has also really helped us to have something really tangible to show what we mean by a whole food system approach. So, for example, in Gateshead, and I know many other areas have done this too, we were able to use the results and recommendations to gather people from across the council, from procurement to people who set contracts for school catering, to the HAF programme, to children and early years services, allotment managers, anyone who is working on food were able to come in a room together in a way that they've never done before. And it was great to show them how they're all contributing to food system change and a wider strategy within all of their own work. And finally, I think the project has helped us to build a really strong network across the region, which will continue to meet together regularly. So I think it's particularly useful for food partnerships which are not based within local authorities. And it feels like a real opportunity to join up what's happening at grassroots local levels with regional policy level work. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey so far, lots of learning, and we're looking forward to seeing how things progress as we go on to do the next 2 rounds over the next year.
Great, and I look forward to picking up some of that up with you in the Q&A slot. But I'm going to swiftly move on. So thank you for that, Nikki. So next up, we have Charlotte. Charlotte Molyneux is the team manager for the business support and innovation team at Devon County Council. She oversees the food and farming support projects, which include Future Farming Resilience and the Devon Agri-Tech Alliance. She also, when she's got a moment, runs the Devon Food Partnership. Over to you, Charlie.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Charlie and I work for Devon County Council. And yeah, broadly our function as a team is that we provide business support programs. So and we also host the Devon Food Partnership. And so we're an economy based partnership where the coordination comes from. But really what I want to talk to you about today is our journey as a food partnership and how it's connected us in different departments across the local authority and with external stakeholders. So if you go to my next slide, please. So just a bit of kind of context for Devon as a whole. So we have a number of food partnerships in Devon. So we're the county partnership, but we also have Food Exeter, Food Plymouth and a Torbay Food Partnership. We have at present a 2-tier local authority, and I think we probably might have a question about devolution later, but so we have a county council, and then we have 8 district councils, and we had some unitary authorities in Plymouth and Torbay. So quite a complex local authority system in our patch. And we've also got with rural, coastal, urban areas within, and we have also 2 national parks within that geography as well. So in terms of the food system, there's lots of kind of different complexities to consider as part of that, and different focuses that we need to look at as a partnership. Just to have I've put a diagram there on our partnership structure, that we have a facilitation team, and that sits within our business support and innovation team. That's me and my colleague Harry West. We have a steering group, and then we have a number of working groups that are looking at key issues, and then we have our wider stakeholder engagement, which we like are our members really across Devon. So if I could go to my next slide, please. This is our timeline, and we were established back in 2021. It came off the back of a lot of work that out of COVID, and really when we started as a partnership, I would say it was a lot. It was quite, if I'm being honest, it was a talking shop. There's so much to talk about with the food system, and we were going round in circles and actually sort of talking about more issues than we were solving. So to consolidate this, we developed our Devon Good Food Strategy, and we launched this in 2023, and this has really been a real kind of guiding piece of work for us in underpinning and moving us forward in the direction of working towards the 6 key themes of sustainable food places. We've got a bronze award, and then we've been looking at particular pieces of work. So I'll just highlight a couple of things that we have done, including most recently looking at working with food and drink businesses around sustainability, and we've called that our People, Planet, Profit series. We've also done a consumer facing campaign around looking at a bit of a consumer behavioural change around buying local, and looking at the kind of the advantages and breaking that down into bite-sized pieces of work. So if I can move on to my next slide. So what I really wanted to focus on is the fact that we are a council hosted food partnership. And what this has done for us as a local authority, I would say, has brought us together in terms of our food work. So right at the beginning of the journey, I've got a diagram there talking about the different departments within the council that are really engaged. I have really close working relationship across these council departments because of the food partnership. We are working much closer together. We're looking at joint approaches and moving forwards. We're working across departments, building work and opportunities together. So it's enabling a lot of collaborative work by having a food partnership. And what we've learned really is that building relationships and finding the right people and knowing what the strategic priorities of the local authority are and linking the work that we're doing as a food partnership to that is really supporting, driving a lot of our work forward. And it's really now bringing our external stakeholders and our internal council departments together. And this just today we've been I've just come from a meeting with a room full of people talking about a vision for Devon and Cornwall for a new food system, and just the excitement and the enthusiasm and dedication in the room really shows how far we've come as a partnership and the power of that food partnership in moving these conversations forward. I will stop speaking, Sarah.
Amazing. Thank you, Charlie. I'll carry some of that excitement forward, but let's quickly get on to last but very not least speaker. We have Lee Robb. She's the founder of Positive Carrickfergus and the co-founder of the wonderful Carrick Greengrocers, who we saw earlier in the Bridging the Gap food. She also founded the Repair Cafe in Northern Ireland. She's a real champion of grassroots participation, community-led regen. And as she puts it, she champions a way to make sure that we can all live the good life. So over to you, Lee.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for inviting me along today to talk about Carrickfergus, which is really at the heart of the work that I'm interested in doing here. Carrickfergus is about 13 miles outside Belfast. It's got a population of over 30,000 people. It has experienced many of the challenges that lots of places across the UK and Ireland have experienced over the last 20, 30 years. And although I have spent most of my life living here and was born here, I have spent a lot of my life completely disconnected from this place. And I worked for a big UK-wide funder for a long time, doing what I thought was important work across the UK, but really not making any contribution to my town at all. And around 2016, I decided that I wanted to change my life a bit. So it just this is, I suppose, kind of, I want to make the point that this is a kind of personal, subjective story, as well as, you know, a bigger story about setting up organizations and trying to create change, and that sometimes the focus can be on a lot of objectivity when we're talking about this stuff and talking about influence and government policy, but, you know, subjective, personal work and getting really heavily involved in your own place is an important part of that big picture too. So I wanted to connect myself to my town and kind of reorientate myself so that I really felt like I was contributing to solutions to the challenges we're facing, rather than maybe helping to create some of those challenges myself or in the work that I was doing. And what could I'm thinking about what I could contribute to my place, but also how could I create space for other people to usefully contribute as well. I'm really interested in systems change, and obviously that's been like a key theme today. But systems change for me is really about systems being and a practice. When we think about, you know, the stories that we tell, how we talk about our places, for example, like Positive Carrickfergus is called Positive Carrickfergus because the story has been so negative about Carrick for a long time. So framing and storytelling and narrative building work is really important part of what we're doing. Focusing on relationships, working collaboratively rather than competitively, and paying attention to patterns and interconnectedness. And crucially in Carrick and in Northern Ireland in general, thinking about what's keeping us stuck. And so one of the things that I wanted to do as I connected myself to my place was talk to other people and find out what they cared about here in Carrick, and if they cared about the same things as me, and then what did that mean? How could we do some stuff together to start to, you know, create some change. And so I did that from 2017 to over a couple of years, and then we kind of tried out doing some small things together, including a big lunch. That was the first thing. So around food, that was one of the first activities that we did together in our town hall, and just kind of dipping our toe into to work that would build community, but also with an eye on community-led regeneration. That we weren't a formal organisation for 3 years, and that was really purposeful to let it kind of breathe and take shape. And then in 2020, we became a CIC and applied for some Emerging Futures funding from National Lottery Community Fund to talk to people about what they wanted for the future of Carrick. And this is where we produced these postcards that you can see, our wildest dreams postcards, asking people what their wildest dream was for our town. In Northern Ireland, we are really good at talking about the past a lot, talk about the present a bit, but we certainly don't talk about the future. And so that felt like quite a radical question to be asking people. And we got postcards back.
1 minute.
Yeah, so I haven't even got the greengrocers to say. Terrible at this. I usually could, yeah. So anyway, we what they said, one of the things they said was they wanted more shops in the town centre. So if we move on to the greengrocers slide, you can see some pictures of what the next slide will. Yeah, there we go. So one of the things that we did out of that work was we worked together, a group of 9 of us worked together over 18 months to develop a greengrocers. We didn't have one in the town for about 15 years. And we'd ask people through Sustainable Food Places project what they where people would go and buy good quality local produce, and it was outside the town. So we opened a greengrocers in July 2024. It's owned by its 434 members. We used a community share offer to raise our startup finance, and we raised £34,000 to open our doors. We've been trading for 20 months, and the last slide that has got a picture. So last November, our minister here, Andrew Mura, who's the minister at the Department for Agriculture, launched the Northern Ireland food strategy from our shop, because they recognised it as a really good example of how the food strategy could be implemented in Northern Ireland. So that was a very quick run through, Sarah.
Amazing. No, thank you so much, Leah. I'm going to stick with you for a moment anyway. I mean, just to say the work that's been happening over in Carrickfergus is really inspiring. If anyone's ever over in Northern Ireland, I do urge you to go and have a visit, as I will do if I'm there again. And the idea of just being able to stand at a till and ring, but we've talked as well about a lot of the conversations that happen over the counter and how that connects you, and then how that's bringing in the interest of politicians into this space. So you come at it a very different way in Northern Ireland, but it just shows that the sort of benefit of this diverse approach. I suppose one of the things I was going to ask you was really, what role you think there is more generally for this ground up community approach to driving the agenda for change, and really what the movement needs to do to support activists like you to take this really grassroots approach.
Well, I think, getting the opportunity to kind of share the story with people is really important. And, like I suppose people are feeling very disempowered at the minute. And it's really important to be able to say, actually, we can come together and do stuff. And a key part of our work is about saying, we have some or many of the resources we need to create the changes that we want to see already. And when we get together and put our 25 or 50 pounds together and create 34,000 pounds, that's not to be glib about, that there are lots of things that, lots of support and resources that people don't have as well. And so that kind of platforms and opportunities to tell those stories are really important. And yes, I think the grassroots, the stuff, the point for us is about getting on and building stuff that's really tangible, that people can touch, that invites people in for lots of different reasons. And even the 9 people that helped set up the greengrocers, we were not all there for the same reasons. Some people just want to see a greengrocer back in the high street. Some people really cared about taking climate action. And this was a way of pulling everybody together. So
That sort of that skill of organising is really, really important within the movement, isn't it? So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to start widening some of the questions out. I was going to come to you, Nikki, but before I do, I just wanted to make a short announcement. So there's been some fantastic growth in the last few years around this agenda, as we mentioned, and particularly around our Good Food Local work, which has been so successful in London and the North East that it is about to go national. So I wanted to share that announcement here. So anyone interested in taking the Good Food Local approach that we've heard so beautifully from Nikki, please put the 22nd of May, 11 o'clock in your diary to sign up for our online launch, and hopefully someone can add that to the chat. And this is an opportunity for you, wherever you're based in the country, to really have a go at taking this Good Food Local audit. You can also sign up for our newsletter. So just that short announcement from the team. So we're really pleased that we've got that opportunity to really share it. So Nikki is someone that's been in amongst this rollout of our Good Food Local and has been sort of doing this across the region. I suppose, you know, I'm looking back at sort of what Tim was alluding to. I'm not sure if you was here for Tim's presentation earlier, and this real opportunity to build resilience. And he talked a lot about what the opportunity is within regions, and particularly within sort of, you know, new mayors and the growth and the devolution agenda. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts or reflections about what opportunities you see coming up through either locally through devolution, but what that regional is really going to bring to systems change in your area.
Yeah, I think I think the Good Food Local programme is an example of a sort of regional network that's kind of helping to, well, I hope it will extend and continue beyond the remit of Good Food Local, and it kind of helping us to have like a stronger voice, be braver, I guess. It's particularly things when you're kind of looking at commercial determinants, where the food system doesn't have boundaries, and it's sort of working together means that we're not just sort of pushing the hot food takeaway to the village over, and giving us some kind of collective bravery to mean that things that are really highly politicized can be and easily influenced by industry can be we can kind of have that collective voice. The devolution thing, I think the North East Combined Authority is really young. It just started in May, so it's still sort of finding its feet. But I know that the Mayor's manifestos particularly show a particular focus on child poverty in the North East, and one of the key things they've started doing is around sharing good practice around free school meals. And the Mayor has also stated plans around junk food advertising on the sort of wider transport network, which has kind of helped our local authority then be able to say, well, if Kim, the Mayor's done it, then we should look at our transport network that our council is responsible for. So yeah, it's kind of early days, I think, in the North East, but I think there's like real potential with the devolution agenda, and the hope that kind of combined authority can bring some good practice, pooling funding, helping things to happen at scale and procured at scale.
It's really interesting. I think we've seen the sort of the devolution, you know, what we've seen in London with the Mayor pushing forward on a lot of those really bolder issues, and then other following suit is really good. And I mean, I didn't know if Charlie, if you had any views on the sort of devolution opportunities, or are you still working out what it all means for you down in Devon?
Oh yes, we are. Yeah, so we've just got a one combined authority that's just formed, like Devon and Torbay, but yeah, it's likely over the next few years that we will have a lot of changes in terms of our local authority structure. So what that means is, yeah, we're in a state of a bit of uncertainty of kind of on, you know, across different areas. And you know that we are aware that there is going to be change ahead, but I think much like Nikki was saying, that you know ultimately I think with that comes opportunity, and it's about us you know keeping our ear to the ground and making sure that we are evidencing what the food partnership is doing and achieving, and reporting on that really as we go along, to be in a good position to say, look, this is what working together, working collaboratively can do, and align it with whatever that new structure might be.
Yeah, still lots to work out, and I suppose that's the opportunity really, is how we get ahead of the curve and work that out for these incoming mayors. So that's great. So I can't hog you any longer. Now over to the audience for some of your questions, and welcome back, Roshni, who's fielding the questions. So what have we got?
Yeah, yes, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone. Coming from a community background, I love hearing about local work. So it's been really interesting for me. We've had loads of questions come through. First one is, as organizations that work across the farm to fork spectrum, why does it still feel like a challenge to join up on food and farming work?
That's great. Yeah, I might field that one to Katie, actually. I think it's been great to hear about your work in Wales and obviously the recent involvement in Bridging the Gap, which is very much trying to join up health, justice and environmental ambitions. So why do you think it is still such a challenge to join up on food and farming work? And how are you managing to do this in Wales?
That's not a little question. Crikey. Okay. I mean, I think the why is, certainly for us in Wales, is because there isn't a national vision in Wales or a national sense of direction from the government about what they want our food system to do for us. And so if you haven't kind of got that national vision, then everything that falls down underneath that, then, you know, doesn't link up and doesn't join up. So, you know, we have a lot of different policy areas and lots of different bits of legislation. You're seeing the same thing happening in England. And then, you know, you have all these different groups set up and all the different things happening. And, you know, you've got your healthy weight, you know, policy in one place, and you've got your food, you've got your farming work in another place, you've got your foundational economy work in a different place, so you've got your food division work. And then, you know, where does social justice fit in all of that? And so I think what government has in Wales got a little bit better at actually is starting to join up and make those linkages, which is great. But I think what the stakeholders on the ground can do is actually demonstrate in an example in real life what it actually looks like to try and make all of those different linkages up. And that's the beauty of the food partnerships, because they can do that at a local level. They can, you know, they can have a local food plan and they can demonstrate how each one of those bits of the system links up. And I think with the maturity of the food partnerships now that we're seeing within the network, I'm talking about UK now, you know, you can really see some great examples of where you're seeing that whole food system actually work out, you know, actually be acted out. I mean, the example that we have in Wales that I would give would be what's happening in Carmarthenshire. And I noticed there was also a question in the chat about how much funding the food partnerships were getting from Welsh Government as well, which I can address here too. But, you know, because that food partnership has had resource from Welsh Government, it could then harness the resource from shared prosperity funding as well, and actually develop and deliver a really fantastic project, which enabled them to kind of shoot ahead in terms of really showing the different bits of the system. So, and they're working with Welsh Regent schools as well. So we can actually see where, you know, they're working on the social justice piece, they're working on the supply chain development piece, they've got a county farm operational, you know, they're working on the local supply into community groups as well. So there's a really good example there of how it's all been linked up. So sorry, I think the short answer is actually demonstrating what it looks like to policymakers and showing it in action is really, really important.
Yeah. And there's something about the scale as well, I think, you know, with the Welsh and also looking to sort of some of the work in Scotland that we're trying to reflect in terms of this regional approach. But Roshni, did you want to come in on that?
Yes. Next question is, government has a clear agenda for growth. Do you think that food partnerships can meet this vision for local growth?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard it come up quite a few times in the earlier session, and Charlie, I'm not sure you made it to the earlier session. We were talking about the sort of national agenda for growth, and I might sort of see if you wanted to come back. Obviously, you're sitting within an economic development context and are really aware of that need for growth. So what do you think the opportunities are to really show sort of from a food partnership, from that local and regional work, that there is growth, there is an opportunity for local growth in all of this work?
Yeah, and I think you know, we've seen so much progress having had the food partnership set up as part of you know, a driver for change within the kind of food work within the council. And just as I think about when it started, how there was lots of pockets of work across the kind of around the food system happening across the council. Well, now that's so much more joined up, and we've got so much more focus on how those different elements can support growth within the local food sector. And we do a lot of collaborative work with like membership organisations like Food Drink Devon, where we're supporting food and drink businesses a lot more closely. We do have a lot of, because of the nature of that, we also within our team do a lot of farming support programs that has been really joined up within our food partnership and supported the kind of that growth and innovation within our farming industry as well. I think that there's a lot of potential of to be done around infrastructure. I think we've got some really good models around kind of aggregation and distribution networks. So the Good Food Loop is a really positive example of that working really well. And I also think that there is kind of growth has to also start with that behavior change and raising awareness of our consumers as well. So it's so important that we bring a lot of people on the journey and making what we're talking about accessible for all. I think sometimes we're so used to speaking in food partnerships, maybe using some jargon and maybe getting really involved in the conversation and actually forgetting, well, food is such a connecting factor for all of us. It's such an accessible subject, but sometimes maybe our language doesn't allow that. So making sure that we're always kind of open and front facing and inviting lots of different people into the conversation as well.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And I mentioned earlier in the chat that Sustain and partners have been looking at this sort of local food growth agenda and a local food growth plan. And I know, obviously, Charlie, you and colleagues have been piloting that down in the Southwest to see, what can a plan really look like for growing that sector. And I think it feels like it's very timely hearing what we're hearing from government. And so we're looking forward. Where are you getting with that? How's that going?
Oh, it's wonderful. That was one of our assemblies this morning. So we've got a Devon and Cornwall regional food plan, and it is looking at a network of food hubs, a distribution and aggregation model that more brings the kind of local food to the consumer. And we had loads of different stakeholders in the room this morning, from producers, from processors, and different people sort of amongst the food system, talking about this vision that we had. And it was very rewarding and exciting. And of course, we had good food to eat, because that is important.
Brilliant. We often talk about this, practice into policy and then policy back into practice. And I think we really get to see that at our work at a local and regional level. Roshni.
Thank you. So sticking on the subject of councils more broadly, this question is, how can we get councils interested in this and prioritizing this? Our local councils are understandably under so much pressure, and we know despite this, we must respond and get plans in action for cities and rural areas for food systems to work better.
So how do we get our councils interested is the summary of that. Nikki, do you want to come in on that? What do you think? What do you think is getting the councils in the North East all engaged in this work?
I think it's come from a public health push. I think it's been the original involvement in this Good Food Local came from the Association Director of Public Health collectively deciding what are our kind of priorities for our region, and doing the kind of the mapping exercise of understanding what are the biggest needs and the biggest reasons for that health inequalities in our region, and diet came up trumps, and tackling obesity and tackling diet-related health inequalities, and just the kind of shocking inequalities of kind of life expectancy in the North East. So I think it came from public health, and that then meant that councils were kind of push to be involved, and that's a way. I don't know if it's the only way that council should get involved.
We see so much of the drive coming from the public health teams who really seem to get that sort of, you know, that determinants of health model and join that up. And I think it was Baroness Walmsley earlier who said the cost of doing nothing is higher than the cost of doing something. So I think that's a really important message to be taken back to councils. I don't know if anyone else had anything to say, or if you want to on that. I mean, Charlie, obviously in Devon, it's not public health, but you work closely with them, right?
Yeah, so our funding comes from public health for our coordinator. So they enable us at the, so our funding is that driven from public health, and they've always been big supporters and are big part of our work within the partnership. We have, I would say, because we have it's the coordination sits within an economy team, it does make sure that we've got like a focus on the wider kind of areas around kind of the economic food system, as well as kind of the health elements, and that's kind of a driver in having it in sat within the economy team, I would say.
Sorry, just one more thing. I would say it's worth saying, I think it comes from the grassroots as well. It comes from kind of very passionate citizens and movements and local action that I think then puts pressure on councils, and that's hard to do when councils are kind of closed to it. But I think particularly in the northeast, we've got some, I mean, everywhere, I'm sure that there's some amazing projects, as Lee was explaining, like one of Lee's projects is amazing as well. And so having those examples that kind of can push and highlight the needs in our communities, I think
and I think that asset-based model, you know, a lot of the partnerships are based within sort of voluntary sector organisations, other are based within councils. So it's really about where that drive. But I think, you know, with the right hooks, I think local authorities can only start to come to the table even more so when they're under financial pressure.
So when you're talking about grassroots action, I have a question about that. And it says, you know, there's been feverish activity going on at local level, and, you know, producing and distributing good quality food and creating evidence of all the benefits that they deliver, but they seem to go under the radar. So the question is, how can we at the grassroots make our benefits more visible?
Lee, that feels like lines up for you, that question. How do you get people to take notice of what you're doing?
Like, I'm going to be quite annoying with my answer here, actually, because we didn't really focus on that work at all. Now, I just think that we like kind of did the work and opened at the right time, and we attracted a lot of attention. Like, the other thing is that, you know, some of our voluntary directors who are on the board of the greengrocers have kind of, we're like, you know, gamekeepers turned poachers, so we kind of understand that world, more institutional world, and how it operates. So I think we have some experience in how to navigate that, how to talk the language, and develop those relationships, and also see through some of the false promises that might be made, and can understand when to invest some energy and stuff and when not to invest energy. But I think, and this is certainly, you know, about Northern Ireland context for me, we're just getting on and doing stuff. We're not sitting around waiting for politicians to get on board or councillors to see the value in what we're doing. We're just doing it. And I like, there's kind of something attractive about that for them, but it hasn't turned into anything tangible for us. You know, so like really the work for us is to connect with other people in communities that are doing this similar type of work with the same energy.
The motivation is different. Nikki, have you got any advice for people that are working at the community level when trying to get the attention of those policymakers in local authority?
I think it's so place specific, and it's kind of how different local authorities work. I think I've sort of run an organisation in one local authority, and we've in that way struggled quite a lot to find the right people to talk to and get our kind of voices heard at that level. But whereas I think in Gateshead, well, obviously from the inside of a council, I think we work a lot, like very closely with voluntary organisations. So I don't know. I think it's pretty place specific and depends on kind of how open councils are to hearing or to working with, and rather than doing to organisations and people. Well, we're out of
almost out of time. Just one more announcement to make. I suppose I was just going to come maybe to Katie, back to Katie, and say I always find you such a beacon of optimism, and so I feel like we need to end on a bit of a glimmer of hope. So what's the sort of one area of hope you're seeing down the line? What can we all hang on to for the next turbulent couple of years?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think it's probably in this room, in this virtual room, isn't it? I mean, I think, you know, the point that's just been made about, you know, local initiatives sort of staying under the radar, I don't think that's true necessarily. There are things that have started, like sustainable food places, as a small pilot, and is now got feelers into every part of the UK. We have, you know, in Wales, we have a programme that started as a small pilot and is now benefiting children across all local authorities in Wales. And I think
Katie, I have to keep it short. I'm getting.
Okay, I'll finish. I think my glimmer of hope is the fact that there is such a desire to collaborate on the ground, and I think there is some absolutely amazing collaboration happening, and so many people going over and above that. I think we should have.
Thank you, Katie. So ahead of the next section, I just wanted to thank you all so much, the amazing panel, networks of practitioners making a difference.